Amazing. So just wanting to acknowledge all the places that you're from. Cape Town. Wow. Hello. Wow. Yeah. Kia ora taina. Manatuki. Yeah, it's really something, taking a moment just to acknowledge these connections in these places. And for those of you who are familiar with Aotearoa and Te Ao Māori, one of the practices that is quite commonplace is as we gather, we start to set intentions, and one form of that is to offer a karakia. So as we begin in this space, I'd love to offer a karakia that can support our work this evening or this morning, depending on where you're from in the world. And so that's simply Mauri oho, Mauri tu, Mauri ora, kia tātou, haumia, kuie, aere. So a chance to gather, a chance to connect for well-being, and acknowledging that there is so much more available to us when we meet in relationship. As we get going, I want to acknowledge Jim, Jim Scully, a familiar name to many in Aotearoa and internationally. Jim, we're in your space. This is Think Place. And for those of you who are familiar with Jim's work, it's a lot more than thinking. It's a beautiful blend of sensing, feeling, and creating and imagining lots of different possibilities for the future. So just want to acknowledge your generosity in holding this space for us, Jim, and yeah, just acknowledge the work that you do for social good and economic good. So, kia ora. Yeah, thank you. I think that's probably the most important acknowledgements as we begin, other than the next one, which is to acknowledge you, Frida, as you introduce Nicholas. Really just want to take a moment to, I guess, acknowledge your role in convening and the leadership act that is. It was not long ago when you said, oh, I think there's some alignment between the work of creative leadership and Nicholas's work. So thank you for allowing us to be part of this evening. And by us as me and Penny. So Penny, my wife, is at home in the top corner of the screen. Thank you for holding the Zoom space. Much appreciated. Yeah. So thank you, Frida, for all that you do to connect, and over to you to do the rest.
Thank you. Thank you. Kia ora, beautiful people in the room and online. Position myself thus. So I sort of feel like we're in quite magical company. The energy is so beautiful with each one of you individually, so this is quite a special experience. And I also want to thank a few people, Jim, for hosting and being the, what did I call you earlier, the sort of the godfather of systems and design thinking in Wellington.
Feel really old.
And Adam and Penny, who have co-instigated and pulled everything together. And Rob, wonderful doorman, overqualified, my husband. And also special thank you to Dana Richarova, who's online and is a business partner of Nicholas. And I think it was her post that I first saw the words leader as healer. And I sort of, as I told Nicholas, I got soul fireworks, actually. Because as a yoga teacher, one day I had been ranting to another yoga teacher about healers are the new leaders. And so the book title spoke to me, and the rest is sort of history. So it's really beautiful to have Dana here tonight. So I get the honor of introducing Nicholas, and I really want to hand to him as quickly as possible. I think he has got so much to offer, you know, 100 hours, not just one. So we'll see what we get through. And to introduce Nicholas, it's like he's lived 5 or 6 lifetimes in his life. Reading his autobio, you know, months of being, or years, maybe a percussionist in Africa and a drummer in Japan, and studying psychosynthesis and bodywork in Hawaii, and working with Thomas Hubel, and creating a form of coaching called mythodrama at the Globe Theatre in London. Like, phenomenal experiential life. So, and as well, I suppose, the more known aspects of the amazing Nicholas Janni is his book Leader as Healer won the Best Business Award, Best Business Book of 2023. And he is a phenomenal transformational leadership coach with CEOs and some of the biggest firms of lawyers and executives in Europe, and is doing work sort of out there at the edge of sense making of how we lead effectively in these times. And I didn't introduce Goodlife Collective. I'll quickly sneak that one in here. It's really brief, actually. Goodlife Collective is just about connections, about connecting us back with self, with others, and with inspirational ideas. And so I feel like Nicholas is a pretty appropriate speaker. So, Nicholas, it's an honor to pass over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frida and Adam and Dana, who's really put all of this together. Thank you. Let me just check that you hear me okay in the room. Can I just, yeah, very good. Thank you. So it's really an honor to be here with you, and good evening to all of you in New Zealand and Australia. Good morning to those who are like me in Europe. And I want to begin by saying that in my perception, this is a time of great awakening. Humanity, as we know, is on some kind of edge, some kind of, and it's as if we're between two worlds or two paradigms. When I wrote my book, I called it A New Paradigm for 21st Century Leadership. I don't think I could have imagined then quite, or actually I couldn't have imagined in any way, the state of things now. So it is the time for great awakening. It is happening in many, many ways. And I would love to speak with you a little bit about what I mean by that and how I understand that, and how I see the requirements of us, whether you are a leader or a practitioner or coach. What is this really calling in us? So for me, the first thing is to see very clearly just what a small world we have created perceptually and normalized. One of my great teachers said recently, it's like we actually live in a 20-room mansion, but we mostly, in fact, pretty much exclusively enter the lobby. And we've forgotten that there's a 20-room mansion that is our true nature. And we've normalized that. When we normalize something, we don't even, it's not even on our radar that there is something more. And in most of the corporate cultures I work in, and two of the top business schools I teach at, I see that we've normalized a world in which the mind is the dominating faculty. In fact, in many ways, it's almost the only faculty that is truly active. The knower, the one that always wants to know everything with our mind, and has been taught from a very young age in our education that it is the most important faculty. Which is why I love Einstein's question, is your mind your master or your servant? Because I think the answer to that really changes, literally changes everything. And we've grown up in a world where we've been taught that the mind is the master and it becomes the master. So we think our way through everything, and we believe that we can actually know things that are really important with our mind. And of course, we can know a lot with our mind. But the kind of knowing that is available to us through the awakening of our body, the awakening of our heart intelligence, the awakening of our intuition is 1,000,000 times more vast than the knowledge of the mind. 1,000,000 times more vast. And I do believe that a major part of the catastrophe, the edges that humanity is on now, is exactly because we've made the mind so dominant. So we, in my work, I call it awakening and healing, meaning that we need to kind of go, if we want to say it in a certain way, we need to go up, but we also need to go down. And it's the going down, the healing part, that is very often so absent, understandably, because our mind is always trying to be in control. Our mind gives us an identity, and it attempts to give us safety and security by knowing. So when we really say, well, we need to go down into the healing work, it's very threatening for our mind, because the mind has to let go a bit. And what is it that we need to meet when we go into the healing dimension of development? And I speak equally for leaders and practitioners, coaches, because what we start to meet when we talk about the healing part of the journey is that we meet everything we've put offline, everything we've put offline in ourselves. And that starts with the body. That's usually quite a joyful process to bring that online. But we need to recognize how much we've normalized living up here. Often when I'm with a room full of leaders, I ask them if they can recall how it feels when the body is really alive. Maybe after exercise or massage or walking in nature. Can you remember how it feels when the body is truly alive? And everyone says, yes, yes, I can remember, it feels great. And then I ask, well, what percentage of the day do you live in that experience of the body being really online? And typically heads go down. And the average is about 5%. I'm sure that may be different for you, but certainly in European culture, it's usually about culture also. And then it's, okay, wow, what do you realize the implication of that? Because if you do an exercise class and you walk out of it and it's been good, you feel more alive. It's not only that you feel more alive, you're in a different reality. Because you may come out, obviously, into the same location that you entered into the class, but suddenly everything is different. But that's pretty powerful to realize that. It's so simple and so powerful. And then the old habits come in and the body goes offline again. The body is a source, as we know, of huge intelligence, huge direct knowing of the world. The interesting thing when we look at it is that my mind doesn't feel anything. I can't feel a person. I can't feel an atmosphere. I can't actually have any direct experience through the mind. So the fact that the mind is 95% of our faculty online, well, the implications are pretty big of that. But when we start to bring the body online, even through exercising, so many people say they get their best ideas when they're exercising. But then we say, well, but only 5% of the day is my body online. For me, that's wow. We really take that in. That's wow. So a big part of our developmental journey for all of us needs to be a regular, very consistent awakening of the body in whatever way works for us, but really, really consistent, so that we walk around each day feeling alive in our body, grounded in our body, and that actually our inner location, if we want to call it that, is much more rooted in the body than in the mind. I'm here, definition of presence. I'm here and I'm available. To be here, I have to be embodied. I have to feel in my body. I have to feel grounded. That's the basic foundation of I am here. If I'm only here as a thinker, I'm not really here. I'm living in an abstract conceptual world. I'm here, embodied. And then we need to move, or it's not a linear process, but we need to talk about what it means to really work with our emotional body, because that's where a huge amount of our energy gets frozen, understandably. Because in our essence, when we're born, we come into the world full of life and energy, unconditional life and energy. And then naturally, inherently, by definition, we go through many, many experiences where that energy is not met sufficiently. It may even be shamed sometimes. It's rare that any of us had enough experience of being warmly, openly met and supported in our natural essence, because we're born into cultures that are already wounded, that are already hurt. So what do we do when we're young? We have only one option. And that is, first of all, a very primary physical option. My energy is flowing and the environment in some way or another doesn't meet me. I have to do that, I have to stop myself feeling, because otherwise it's intolerable. To be alone with my emotion, with my energy, is intolerable as a child, literally intolerable. So I have to stop the energy, and then I have to start fitting in with my environment. This is fundamentally important. I have to start adapting myself to my environment, because the terror of being alone is so great that I will do anything not to feel alone as a child. So I start to fit into my environment, to adapt myself. And in so doing, I naturally lose some or a lot of contact with the essence of who I am. And then I develop an identity that is largely based on fitting in and on not feeling a lot of the emotions that I had to turn away from. I had to freeze in myself. So an inevitable and essential part of the awakening and healing journey is that we have safe enough environments where we can turn back towards all of that which is frozen inside us. All the hurts, all the wounds, all the fears, all the anger, all the rage, all of this. All of this. And I often say there are 4 primary emotions: joy, fear, anger, and sadness. And there is no positive or negative, because the degree to which we can feel joy is exactly commensurate with the degree to which we can feel sadness or fear or anger. It's impossible to just feel joy. So the whole joy project is a non-starter, and a lot of money goes into the joy project. So the wellness industry, I checked the other day, is $6 trillion. And most of the wellness industry is focused on how can I feel good, which is, of course, very worthwhile. It's very worthwhile. And the wellness industry supports a lot of people to lead better lives. It's not the same as the transformation journey. The transformation journey is one in which we agree to turn towards everything that we might call dark or hidden or difficult, And we do so together. We create warm, unconditionally loving environments together. I will be with you, whatever you're feeling. I will be with you in your despair. I will be with you in your hopelessness, because you will have spent your whole life trying not to feel that. I will be with you in the parts of you that are most difficult for you to feel. That's transformational coaching. And I can only do that to the degree that I have met those parts in myself, and that I am embodied, and that my heart is open for you. That's transformational coaching. And why is this so important in leadership? Because if we do not face all of those parts of us, and that's a lifelong process, it's not a weekend workshop, it's a lifelong process. I am living in the lobby of who I am. And that means my whole perceptual bandwidth is very small. And I'm trying to solve complex, more and more complex, more and more unpredictable scenarios with a very limited part of my intelligence. And I am often, to a large degree, numb, quite simply numb. If I speak from my own experience, I'm in a lifelong journey of de-numbing, unnumbing. It's a lifelong journey of unnumbing, which means, what does unnumbing mean? It means that in a relational scenario, I feel you. I feel you. When we meet, I feel you. I don't just listen to your words, I feel you intimately. And that comes more and more online. And for leaders, I believe that's totally essential. First of all, even to be a leader who can listen. When I ask people if they remember the leaders who they felt really listened to them, everyone can remember them, and they're few and far between. But listening is far, far more than I hear your words. When you feel listened to, could be for 1 minute, the leader gives you, she or he gives you a quality of attention, and you receive that deep inside you. And it speaks to our very, very deep need inside of us. We all want to feel received. We all deeply want to feel seen, as we call it. So a leader has to have worked on themselves enough to be able to have that presence. A leader has to have worked on themselves enough to hold space. It's one of the relatively new definitions of leadership. The capacity to hold space. So in a team, you're a senior leader in your team. Can you hold space? Which means, are you able and willing to attend to everything that's happening in your team? Not just the strategic. Are you willing to include all the feelings that are here? Are you willing to be able to allow people to be anxious instead of having to sit there saying, I'm fine. How's everyone today? Fine. Which means I'm sitting there like that. What kind of space do you hold as a leader? What kind of space do you hold as a coach? How big is the space you hold? Which will be entirely dependent on your inner journey. That's why I believe very strongly that anyone who is coaching, anyone who is a leader, has to put their inner development as the first priority and stop trying to fix everything out there. Because when we start to develop ourselves internally, the whole way we perceive everything out there changes. And most of the time, trying to fix something out there is by and large a way of avoiding looking in here and experience. So working with the emotional body is a huge part of the awakening and healing. And the more we work with the emotional body, the more we work with our physical body, faculties like intuition naturally come online because it's a core part of who we are. And intuition means I know things. I don't need a lot of data. In fact, sometimes I don't need any data at all. I know things. I know things. It's a form of direct knowledge. And as Einstein also said so amazingly once, the rational mind is a faithful servant. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. And we have created a society which honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. What an amazing statement from a great mystic. Einstein was a great mystic as well as a great scientist. And when faculty like intuition comes online, we also realize what a small world we live in if thinking is our dominant faculty. Because intuition opens a vast panorama of knowing, and it only comes online when our body fully comes online and when our emotional body starts to be more open. It's a natural trinity: body intelligence, heart intelligence, and intuition. And as all of that starts to open, we also naturally, what we might call the awakening part of us, the awakening capacity starts to really deepen. And this is a capacity, it's not even a capacity, it's a dimension of our consciousness that every culture has written about. Every culture since time immemorial has spoken of the possibility that we have of the separate sense of self melting, the boundaries of the separate sense of the self melting. This already happens the moment two people really feel each other. Two people enter a dialogue and the whole feeling each other is online. Your individual identity is already melting. And as that deepens, we start to move more and more, maybe occasionally at first, but more and more as a part of our daily experience. We move into an experience of a dimension of life that is far beyond the linear, which in the traditions has different names. In the Jewish tradition, they speak of how when you open a book, you have the black letters and you also have the white page. What does it mean to walk through our daily life focused on the black letters, everything that's in front of us, everything we're dealing with, while at the same time having an inner sense of the white page? That's also game-changing. The white page is where all creativity arises. All new ideas arise from the white page. We don't produce them. That's why we say the idea came to me. So when we look at a kind of more comprehensive map of awakening and healing, it's all intertwined, even the emotional and the body and the physical body. Because if you're working with someone and they recognize, let's say, anxiety or fear inside them, for which slowing down is usually needed, out of the doing, hyper-doing modality, and someone actually allows themselves to feel fear in their body, what happens is almost always suddenly the body comes online. And suddenly then there's a sense of inner space, which is the beginning of the white page. Inner space, hence all the emphasis on mindfulness, is the beginning of the white page. The white page is infinite. Infinite. That's to say that the more we commit to our inner journey, the bigger the white page gets. because we're talking in the end about eternity. The white page is eternity. It's the infinite. And as Rumi once beautifully wrote, live in the nowhere that you come from, even though you have an address here. I think that's an amazing sentence. So the calling is for us to fully engage with our address here, while also living with the whisper of the nowhere. The whisper of the nowhere always in the background. So as I began, just going to check the time. Yeah. As I began, I do believe this is a time. It's almost like there is a split happening in humanity. And I was researching recently how many of the great wisdom traditions, and of course the indigenous traditions, spoke exactly about what was happening now, what is happening now. It's really astonishing. The Native American traditions, the Kabbalistic tradition, the yogic tradition, they all prophesied exactly the state humanity would be in now. This catastrophic lostness, because we're navigating life without any kind of real compass, without any kind of rudder, marooned in our thinking mind, marooned in the lobby of the mansion that we all live in as our natural essence. So I do believe that as coaches and as leaders, this is really the time to be bold. This is the time to look at all the ways that we still live in a much smaller version of who we are. And subscribe to that because it's easier and safer to do that. Of course it's easier. Of course it's safer. And that's why community is so important. Communities of practitioners. That's why leaders need coaches. That's why leaders need to be part of small circles who are committed to expansion, who are committed to blowing open the doors of the narrow field that we condemn ourselves to. So in that context, I want to propose that online and in your beautiful room, you might break into groups of 3. And take as a topic, in what way are you still playing small? In what way are you still playing smaller than who you really are? Not to judge that in any way whatsoever. To see it, if it's true, maybe for some of you it's not true. But to really contemplate that topic together. Contemplate it with open heart. If you see that it has at least some truth, then maybe you can feel some of the anxiety that would go with playing more from who you really are, which would be your heart's longing. It would be your soul's sense of what is your real power, what is your real calling. And just to talk together, maybe for 10, 15 minutes, how that question lands in you. Really as openly and honestly as you can. And then we'll come back together and I'll be delighted to take questions and have some dialogue with you. So there in person, find yourself 2 people, maybe people you don't know. And online, we'll go into breakout rooms as well. Yeah? Thank you. So I'd love to hear from you now. And if you're online, of course, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand electronically. There should have an easy way to do that. but maybe let's start with those who are in the room. If anyone would like to speak, if you raise your hand and the microphone will come to you. Anyone in the room like to share or ask something? Frida, I don't hear you. Is that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe raised her hand online.
It was just a comment that arose in our discussion with the 3 at the end, which
Great.
someone said, what sort of bigness does Nicholas sort of, what's he talking about? So, you know, like there's big in the conventional sense, like you could be in the little lobby and bigness was more power, more money, more, you know, but we don't sense you're pointing to that at all. So I just wondered if you wanted to say a little bit more about the nature of the bigness that sits behind your question.
Oh, thank you. What a beautiful question. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. I'm not talking about more money. I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about redecorating the lobby. I love how you asked that. Thank you. No. I'm talking about not even upgrading our operating system. I'm talking about moving into a new operating system. And maybe the simplest way to say it is to consider what it means. I am here and I am available. What that really, really, really means. To be really here, to be really embodied. Feeling the whole world through my body, moment to moment to moment, noticing my body, breathing properly, feeling the ground as a foundation, that my heart has unnumbed because I've, in this journey of looking towards the parts of me that have been frozen. So my heart body starts to come online. I feel you. I'm not talking about that as a metaphor. I feel you. I feel you. My intuition is open. My whole perceptual field is vast compared to when I'm living in the lobby. And I'm just thinking, doing, thinking, doing. So I'm literally speaking about moving into a different reality. You're absolutely right. And the way that happens is through our inner work. No other way. And it's more than the wellness project. It includes the wellness project. But I'm talking about a transformational project. And that if you're a coach, you are so present with your client that this is what I teach in my 6-month transformational coaching program. And it blows people's world open because I work with very experienced coaches who have never realized that they could totally feel their client. That you don't need clever strategies or clever questions. The first thing you need is that when you show up in front of me, your whole interior is clear to me on a feeling level. I feel you. I feel your wounding. I feel your brilliance. I feel all dimensions of you. I feel your soul potential. That's a different reality. That's the reality of awakening. And humanity is at the edge of that now. More and more people are waking up in that way. And that is the future. That is the future that all the prophecies of the great traditions have spoken of. Because in the old paradigm, we're heading towards the cliff edge, and we may go over the cliff edge in some ways. It may be well too late to save huge disasters from happening. But while that is occurring, there is something else birthing, what I call a great awakening. It is birthing, there is no question about that. And it's for each of us and to support each other to be in that river to be in that river, because that's what's needed. So I hope I could speak to your question. It was a really lovely question. Thank you. All questions are welcome. Everything is welcome. So yes, someone at the back in the hat.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Athena.
Athena, hello.
Hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, it feels to me, well, I've experienced that the world today, we seem to be on some sort of collective suicide mission as far as,
Right.
excuse me, runaway climate change,
Yeah.
fashion. It's all a little bit nutty out there at the moment. And I was thinking when I read the title of your book that a leader as a healer today would be one that will help us heal from overconsumption and greed in time enough to save our planet and kind of ourselves. Do you see that role of a leader as a healer? And how can someone lead the world out of this?
First and foremost, only and always by doing their own inner healing and awakening. And just a small correction, I deliberately called the book Leader as Healer rather than Leader as a Healer. It's just, it seems a small thing, but for me, Leader as Healer is a kind of archetype. And it's an embodiment of healing fragmentation. Healing means fragmentation comes coherent. Because most of the culture we live in, even the way people speak, is not coherent, in the sense that very often you feel when someone speaks that there is a whole process going on inside them, somewhere out here. You ask most people, can you tell me how you're feeling right now, which is happening here, but then the answer comes from here, and mostly you get a lot of thinking. So just to give an example of what I mean by leader as healer creates a culture because they've created it in themselves, where, for instance, we speak together more authentically. Imagine a team meeting where people are speaking really authentically from their experience, not from their thinking. That's a huge game-changing move. Where we, for instance, acknowledge, yeah, we're a little bit lost right now. We don't know where to go. Wow, let's be really curious about that. Let's notice how anxious we feel. And let's sit with that instead of the solution, so we stop feeling anxious, which, by the way, we won't stop feeling anxious, but our mind believes that we will. Let's really sit with what's here. That's a very, very mature leader and a very mature team that can do that. And let's each person share their experience exactly as it is. That's a very sophisticated capacity that we have to really work to develop. Let me share exactly what my experience is now. What's happening in my body? What's happening in my emotions? What do I intuit right now? A team that can work like that is in a completely different reality to the way most teams operate, as I observe in my travels. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Athena. It is bringing in something completely different. And maybe the key word is coherence. Just think about our original families. Incoherence was where there was a whole energy field, but the dialogue was something different. What was spoken did not match the energy field. Does that make sense to everyone? Just show me if that makes sense. Yeah? So here are we, a young, innocent child, and we're like, what's going on here? What? I'm feeling what's happening, but all the dialogue is as if it wasn't happening. Wow. And at that point, all I can do is shut down my perception of what's actually happening and try and participate in this dialogue, metaphorically and literally. So no wonder we grow up in incoherence. No wonder most teams are operating in profound incoherence, meaning a huge gap between what is spoken and what is actually happening. And mostly what is spoken is about strategic direction. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? Instead of, how are we really feeling right? How are we really feeling right? Because when we do that, and as any kind of group, miracles start to happen. Whole new ideas start to come in. And within an hour, we're suddenly in a new reality. So this is all the work of leadership, and it's all the work of a real coach who holds a transformational space, who won't engage with the client in their strategic thinking, who says, no, 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 no. This is the problem you think you're dealing with. But let's really slow down. Let's really see what's happening in you. Because the moment we work with that, and the moment you connect, the moment you come into more coherence, the whole way you see reality will change. So let's not talk about what you call out there. There is no out there. Actually, there is no out there. There are events happening out there. But how we experience them is 100% about here. It's nothing to do with out there. But we're all the time trying to fix out there because it's much easier than actually being with what's in here. We need to be compassionate with that, really compassionate with ourselves. It's hard. The transformational project is hard. And we need really to support each other. And I see leaders I work with go through the most extraordinary changes in themselves and in how they lead. And same with people I train to be coaches, or rather, I usually work with very experienced coaches, but then they come into a training with me and their whole world changes and they start talking about their clients are suddenly opening up to them in a completely new way. And they're like, wow. Because something is changing in them, their transmission is changing. The presence they go into a coaching session with their client is much deeper, much more open. And then a client will naturally start saying, you know, I feel so lonely. Wow, okay, thank you. Now we're in real territory, not some kind of ridiculous thinking strategy territory. You can see I'm passionate about this. Because it's game-changing. When coaches start working with what is really happening, it's game-changing. When coaches say, no, no, we're not going to think about this. We're not going to think about this for a moment. We're going to start connecting with what's really happening inside you. And I have no idea where it's going. So if you're a coach, you have to be willing to always be in the complete unknown, not to have a plan of where you're going. All you know is that you're holding a space in which there can be integration and coherence. And coherence starts with, let me find the exact words for what's happening inside me. That's a huge thing because we have to see how incoherent we are a lot of the time. We use words and we think we know what they mean, and people respond as if they think they know what they mean. How many times in the coaching session have I said, just a minute, what does that, when you use that word, what do you really mean? Can you tell me what you really mean? And the client starts to say what they really mean, and it has nothing to do with the word they used. Wow. But if that's not challenged, we just go on and on using words as if they mean something, but they don't most of the time. They're empty concepts. We have to break this. Reader's telling me there are questions online. So please, whoever would like to. Frida, can you bring someone on?
Joe, do you want to go first? Your question was up, your hand.
Hi, Joe. I see
And
you.
then
I see
Alina,
you.
we can go to you. Thank you.
Hi, Nicholas. Thank you. Well, when we went into that question, I didn't realize we have a question tonight. It was actually really powerful for me to reflect. So thank you for that. The way that I feel that I was still playing smaller is I do a lot of internal family systems. I'm sure you've heard of internal family.
Of course, it's
Yeah.
beautiful work.
And I actually wondered whether hearing you had done psychosynthesis makes sense because they're very similar. I use IFS with not only with leaders, but with a lot of clients. And one thing I was curious to ask you about was, you mentioned earlier about parts of us are desperately trying to be seen, which I see all the time. But one thing that's coming up an awful lot with clients as well recently is parts of them coming up that are desperately trying not to be truly seen because they're so scared of being truly seen. So you've got that polarization, as we often have, with part that doesn't want to be seen and part that's desperately trying to be seen. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit to that and your experience with that.
No, it's so beautiful. Your precision. That's so precise how you say that. So from my perspective, Joe, everything needs to be unconditionally and equally welcome. That's the simple answer to your question. Because the part that doesn't want to be seen is sitting on a lot of shame. The worst thing we can do as a coach is try to change something. Right?
Yeah.
And if I say to you and you bring a part like that and I say, no, let's welcome that part unconditionally. Of course, there's a part of you that doesn't want to be seen. Let's really embrace that with our heart. And if you feel it's possible, what does that sit on inside? What's underneath that not wanting to be seen? Shame. And if a person is not ready to feel it, that's also, I really understand for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's welcome it all absolutely equally. That's the foundation of what I believe is transformational coaching.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we're trying to, coherence means we become one. So any opposition we have to anything creates incoherence. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why any attempt to bring peace out in the world, when we are polarized inside, is a complete non-starter.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to try and bring peace out there than look at the lack of peace in ourselves.
Yeah.
So union is that everything is welcome, exactly as it is. And once that happens, very often it's very natural for someone's nervous system to be able to then relax into what's deeper inside. But the moment we have any opposition, the game is over.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I appreciate you keep saying about doing our own inner work, because I could not agree with you more. And
I can tell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah.
Alina.
So someone else.
Yeah, Alina, shall we jump to you now?
Wait a minute, I need to just my screen.
Yeah, thank you.
I see Alina. Alina in person or online? Okay, Alina. Go ahead, Alina. Yes, thank you.
Kia ora, Nicholas. Thank you. I feel like your last response went a little bit of a part way to answering my question too. Certainly, thank you, Joe, for bringing internal family systems into the room. Something that I've been deep diving in a big way myself recently. But the thing that came up in our chat room was the for those of us who do have an offering for the world and, you know, are wanting to help people or coach people or share our ideas, there's a part of the marketing of self that feels really icky, or quite discordant with, with this social media, selling yourself, trying to beat the algorithm to appear in order to make a livelihood, in order to share these ideas. And it's like marketing itself is quite, or the way that you often have to go about it is quite discordant with some of the themes that we're talking about. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on that you can share.
Well, you see, I start more from my feeling of you rather than thoughts about that topic. Because I think, first of all, what you bring is a huge issue for all of us. And I think I would invite you next time you're in an appropriate scenario to look at what this really touches in you deep down. Because on one level, we could speak about the topic for sure. And at the same time, I have a sense that it would be more important to touch into what this really brings in you, about your willingness to really be visible, your willingness to stand in really the depth of who you are, which is so big, Because I think if you would touch that territory, the questions would be much more easily addressed. They wouldn't seem like the conflict that you present them as. Do you see does that make sense for you? Just unmute. So you
Yes, it does. Sorry, I muted because I'm frantically typing.
Does it make sense? Because it brings
it does.
up
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Because this kind of topic brings those pieces in ourselves. Also about hiding a little bit, about shame topics and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I speak from my experience as well. The question I can completely understand.
Yeah.
But as this is a beautiful example as well, you bring a beautiful example of how it looks like we should talk about the topic, but actually the real topic is much deeper first. This is a beautiful example of that. Even like if we're working with a leader and she or he brings what seems like a very reasonable topic to talk about, but you as coach feel, yeah, but this is your question. There's a question and there's a process. And we're very conditioned to just go with the question. But actually, often there is a deeper process inside. And thank you for being open to hearing.
Thank you.
You modeled this for all of us. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We have Jeremy with his hand up in the room, but I'm online. I'm wondering, did we want to switch to the room and take turns as
Is there anyone in? Yeah, let's go back into the
and we're
room.
back in the room. Otherwise, I can jump to you, Jeremy. I just wanted to see if anyone was waiting in the room.
Yes, someone is. I see someone with their hand up. Let's go in the room and then we go.
Frida, I'll need you to unmute. Oh, you have, well done.
I'm kind of curious, like I thought it was such a fabulous open question, and we were talking about how easy it was, even with people we didn't know and with some we did, to get into that. What I was curious about is what your favorite second question is.
I have no idea because we're not there. We're not there, so I have no idea. I don't have prepared lists of questions. That question came to me when I was tuning into you this morning, that this would be a beautiful question. It came to me as I was speaking to you.
Right.
How many Kiwis do you know?
Because, well, maybe more than it's apparent. Because this also says something, you see. Because, when I teach a 3-day retreat, I have very limited agenda. And And whenever I go into a coaching session as a coach, I have no agenda.
Yeah.
I have only to be with what is arising in you now.
I love that.
Because our agendas just mostly keep us in the lobby. So I mean, let me just think. What would be? I can hardly.
No,
even
it's
think
fine.
about
The
that. No,
emerged
but it's
perfectly good
interesting. It's interesting for me to notice. I can hardly even think about that because it would be like an abstract way of being, right?
Yeah.
But thank you. I appreciate your curiosity. What would your next question be to yourself? Maybe let's tune into that for a moment.
I think like what came up really was what the impact of that was for us. That was the question I found myself being curious about with my teammates, as it were.
How would you characterize the headline about your experience of the conversation you had? Just like headline, the experience of it rather than what you talked about.
I think the headline experience was safety.
Ah, beautiful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so thank you. We see how essential that is. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I still have no idea what would be the next.
It doesn't
matter. Although what you bring, of course, and we don't necessarily have time now, would be, well, let's look at what is the real composition of safety. And I'll tell you why I asked that, because there is all this, certainly, I don't know, in your neck of the woods, but in Europe and America, there's a huge conversation about psychological safety.
Right.
And most of it is very shallow. It's very shallow, because I think real safety that you point to so beautifully is something very deep. And we do need to really look into what that is. What are the components of real safety? So thank you. Yeah. You see how by being with the I have no idea, we get into something important. Thank you so much. Someone over the other side of the room, a gentleman with your hand up.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much, Nicholas. And beautiful kōrero, beautiful talk, as we say here.
Yeah.
Was there an implied keeping small is a bad thing in your question?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. I think it's very important to see that it's totally natural to play small. And it's not that it's a bad thing at all, because it's been essential to do that. It's simply that if we want to be at the maximum of our potential and make the maximum contribution we can, we need to look at the whole way we are playing small. And I speak for myself as much as you. And we need to, if we have a commitment to being of the greatest service that we feel called to be, we do have to look at those parameters in ourselves without judging them in any way at all. As I said to Joe, anything we judge or polarize with, it's game over. So I hope that answers you in some way.
Yeah, no, thank you. When one's been a big character, choosing to behave in a small manner for a period of time is an interesting experiment in itself.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah. And maybe also just say that of course it would be a whole other conversation about what does it really mean, small or big? What does it really mean? So you also open up a very interesting topic that would be that would be a further investigation. We've got what would safety be, really is safety, and what does it really mean to be bigger? So I appreciate you bringing that. It makes me really start to consider that as well. Thank you.
Jeremy, would you?
Jeremy, yes.
Jeremy Beale.
Thanks a bunch, Nicholas. This is wonderful. Thank you. I have to think very carefully how to phrase this question. One of the things I'm developing and involved with my business clients and leaders is basically summed up with the working title of returning eldership to leadership.
Oh, beautiful.
Personal view, I think one of the challenges the world faces is the crisis of leadership. And
for sure.
I have lived with First Nation peoples in the USA, and I currently work a lot with Maori here. So from their perspectives, eldership is not first and foremost a description of physical age. It is one of perspective, and I'm working around the terms that eldership involves breadth of vision, it involves scope of responsibility, and it involves a depth of compassion.
Yeah.
And I am not even thinking of attempting to return eldership. It'll take generations to do that. What I am doing is creating a program that I'm calling it opens a door onto a stairway, which may well broaden and shift how you regard what leadership is and how you deliver that. I'd love to explore briefly the relationship between leader as healer and leadership seen through an eldership lens.
You asking me how I would compare the two?
If possible, in a concise way, yeah. Because I so strongly resonate with the role of a leader as healer. I'm a fan of Raj Sisodia and his work in that space.
Yeah, we're about to do a podcast. I'm going to go on his podcast soon.
Yeah.
I think they're very close, Jeremy, and I absolutely love the way you speak about the eldership and that it's not about physical age. I think what the correlation is wisdom as opposed to knowledge.
Yeah.
And the whole realization that wisdom is a depth of our being and therefore not dependent on physical age. That wisdom arises as our body, heart, and intuition come online, and our mind relocates to being a servant of that intelligence. That to me is a kind of essence of wisdom and of elderhood and of the project of leader as healer. The leader as healer builds cultures where we understand that the thinking mind needs to serve the much deeper intelligence that is innate within all of us, but that has got covered up, shrunk, because of the whole nature of our culture and our education. You know, when we look at our education, we can also say it's unbelievable that actually nothing important was taught to us.
Yes.
Nothing important was really taught to us about how we relate to each other, how we connect with our purpose, how we become really grounded in our bodies. That was not on the curriculum. So I love what you're saying. I think they're very close in this.
Thank you. You've certainly added to both my appreciation and my curiosity. So thank you so much for that.
No, thank you for your presence, Jeremy. So, I know we're coming to the end of our time. So I would love to just finish with a short meditation, if that's okay for you. Yeah? So I want to invite you all to just sit quietly for a moment. And close your eyes. And maybe take a couple of deep breaths. And lengthen and relax the out-breath. The out-breath is the one we hold, and it's the way that keeps us in tension. So the very simple action of relaxing the out-breath is a very potent power we have, just to relax the out-breath so you literally feel yourself dropping into your base, into your contact with the chair. And simply to notice everything that's moving inside you, how you may have been touched or not. If there are emotions arising within you, if there is some kind of intuitive sense arising within you, if there is some kind of, even at the top of the crown of your head, some kind of subtle sensations arising inside you, at the same time as you feel your feet anchored to the ground. And to contemplate for a moment the miracle of who we are as human beings. That we came here to be in these extraordinary bodies. And then we got locked into our minds. And what it means to relax into the much bigger possibility of who we are. To live as really connected human beings, connected to ourselves, connected to our bodies, connected to our hearts, and therefore connected to each other. Living from the intelligence of our bodies, our hearts, and our intuition. That this is the new future for humanity. Whether or not it can save is irrelevant. This is the new future. And may we all support each other to have the courage to keep walking on the real path of transformation. Thank you with all my heart for your presence and for allowing me to be here with you. Thank you very, very much.
Got to get in just the right position for the lobby between online and in person. Nicholas, before we sort of say thank you and farewell, which is kind of sad, this is so beautiful. I'm mindful that did you want to speak to potential upcoming courses that you have?
Thank you, Frida. Yes, I'd love to just briefly mention that we're starting at the end of June an online program called Returning from Exile, Living in Presence. And it's the first program for a while I've offered that is not only for leaders or coaches, but actually for everyone. And it's modular. It'll be intensive and absolutely for sure transformational, because we'll work with everything we've talked about today so that we return from the exile of disconnection and we live more and more in presence in whatever field you're working in. So if you are a leader or a coach, this will certainly be a great value. And then later this year, we'll be offering again the 6-month transformational coaching program. And I see Ian is here from Australia who just finished that program. And that's a really, really game-changing, in-depth offering for those of you who are full-time coaches. All the details are on our website in the Matrix Wisdom Academy. So thank you, Frida, for inviting me to do that.
Thank you for that. I suppose I just want to say a huge thank you, really. I know you're on the opposite side of the planet, but we can feel your energy in the room. It's just this warm wisdom, and yeah, it feels really safe, which feels like quite a gift. And just being able to experience your work has been fascinating. Did you want to say anything, Adam, my co-host? No. Just a reminder for everyone online, I think Penny's happy to stay online if you want to keep chatting and talking. But Nicholas, this has been a real gift, beaming in down to the opposite side of the planet. There's been a lot of sort of laughter and you know, in the room as you're speaking. It's really landing. And I hope that we can stay in touch, and I hope there's some interest in your course, and just huge thank you. Yeah.
Well, it's really been a joy to be with you, and I hope I may one day visit your amazing land.
I think you should. Yeah. Lots of potential hosts. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, Penny's going to take a photo. Oh.
I tried to do it.
Big thank you to Penny, the Zoom whiz.
Yes, thank you, Penny, and thank you both, Adam and Frida. Thank you so much.
And to the attendees, such incredible questions. Wonderful. So we're going to just bid you farewell from here in Wellington, and
thank you.
go and enjoy a nice cappuccino over there, Nicholas.
Thank you. All right. Bye for now, everyone.
Thank you, Nicholas.